I am so pleased to introduce Susan Banetton, her name is practically the queen of commercialization in ophthalmology. Over the past 30 years, Susan has led numerous launches of ophthalmic products, including medical devices and pharmaceuticals, both branded medications and generic, as a co-founder of a startup company and as an executive in a big corporate. Take your notes and pens out, because I believe that in this session we are going to learn a lot about commercialization of ophthalmic products in the US. And Susan, let's start with the first question. With your recent experience oversighting multiple launches as the president of Thea Pharma US branch, could you please share with us some highlights from this lifelong journey?
Sure, pleased to do it. Can you hear me? Can everyone
Loud and
hear
clear.
me? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Daphne. It's a real pleasure to be here today with you and the audience, and I want to thank the planning committee for the invitation. This year for me marks my 40th year of my life sciences career, which is really hard for me to believe because I still feel very much like the young woman who joined the industry right out of college. I was fortunate to spend my first 10 years of my career in the vaccine industry before pivoting and landing a job in the ophthalmology therapeutic area in marketing back in 1995. So I'm a business and commercial person by training, and I'm a scientist at heart. My undergrad degree is in biology, and I did go on to get my MBA after working full time with a large strategic company in marketing. So I work for both large and small companies. So some of the larger companies I've had the pleasure to work for are Bausch & Lomb. I've worked for Shire. I've worked for J&J. And some of the smaller companies that I've worked for include the one I'm working for right now, which is Taya, and also a startup company that I co-founded and ran commercial operations called Sirion Therapeutics. So at Sirion, I actually had the opportunity to work with a really talented team, and we licensed 6 compounds and raised over $120 million and received FDA approval for 2 drugs that I had the opportunity to launch in the US. When we couldn't take that company public back in 2008, we actually sold those assets, one to actually Alcon and the other to B&L. And then I went to work for a large strategic ophthalmic company in a BD capacity. So over the course of the 3 years that I was there, the team, my team and the team I work with, we transacted over a dozen deals of all levels of complexity that included both M&A and in licensing deals. And more than half of those assets are actually being sold and marketed by Bausch & Lomb today. So when Bausch & Lomb sold to Valeant, I left the company and I had the opportunity to join Shire up here in Boston, where I am currently. And I led the build out of the ophthalmic pipeline and the therapeutic area, which was a new therapeutic area for Shire at the time. And in the span of almost 4 years before Shire was sold to Takeda, we had transacted over 6 pipeline deals, and we launched Xiidra, which was a dry eye product, and it quickly became $500 million product in the dry eye market here in the US. So when Shire was actually sold to Novartis in 2019, I joined Taya Pharmaceuticals here in Boston and to establish the company and to build the business. But
we can hear you.
No, I'm just no. Oh, no, no. There's no slides to do this, so this is just with Daphne and I, so we're okay. So I launched so at Taya. So I was here since 2019 to build the business, and in 2022 we actually purchased seven products from Acorn, the branded assets out of the Acorn portfolio, and that really accelerated our commercial entry here into the US. And we did that on purpose before we got our first NDA approval from the FDA for a product called IUZA, which is a preservative free glaucoma product here that we launched in 2023. So in 2022, I also launched a portfolio of dry eye and lid hygiene products under the brand name of Ivisia. It's a popular brand and a growing brand here, and the team's doing a great job here building that from nothing to over $20 million in a year and a half. So our business is healthy and growing. We did over $100 million in sales in 2023. And in my spare time, I'm also a board member on three ophthalmic startups that are endeavoring to solve large unmet needs in the eye care space. So all along my career, I've learned a lot about myself, which I think is important as an entrepreneur. And I've learned what I like to do best. And what I like to do best is working at the intersection of science and business. And I've really found my home in ophthalmology, and I'm passionate about the ophthalmic community. So I've really had a good fortune here to have the longevity of career here in life sciences. But the most important thing to me all throughout the 40 years that I've been in industry is that I really get to help patients and doctors all along the way by bringing them new therapies and to advance all the treatment in eye care.
Thank you. So it seems like you've been all around the space for decades now, and you know everyone and all drugs and indications. Let's dive into commercialization preparations. We spoke before about KOLs in the panel on pre-launch. How important is it to involve KOLs in your development program? And when is the right time to engage KOLs and get them involved? And what are the do's and don'ts with KOLs? It's not probably all the time a brilliant idea. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, sure. No, that's a great question, right? So all throughout my career, I think it's really important to. I've worked on the drug side most often, OTC and drug side, but it's really critical to build a product to begin with the end in mind, and to do that, I think it's really remiss if you don't involve clinicians and KOLs. I think they're critical for commercial success for a lot of reasons. And at the end of the day, we're building, products to solve unmet needs for both the doctors and patients. And often the clinician is the gateway, right, between you and your product getting to a particular patient. So it's important to engage them from the start. I always, whenever developing a product or looking at a product concept, involve KOLs right from the beginning, from preclinical all the way through commercialization. So they really can help guide product development. I've utilized them to help with clinical protocol development. For those KOLs that have regulatory experience, it's also helpful to engage them to make sure that we are building products that are going to be differentiated from a clinical utility perspective versus the standard of care, right? And this is really tricky early on because you're building a product that's going to compete in the market sometimes 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now, and you have to understand where the market is going so that you're able to build differentiation into your clinical program early, right? And a lot of that feedback comes from the KOLs who are treating these patients and taking care of these patients today. So beyond that, they can really help you assess your various strategies around clinical, medical, and commercial. And they're also going to be the folks that can help facilitate, the product awareness, adoption, and advocacy for your product in the early days during your launch. So for me, it's very, very important to involve KOLs from the beginning, and any material that you're creating and KOLs are involved, that will give you more credibility from a medical and promotional content when it comes time for launch.
Thank you. The next question is relating to your experience as an entrepreneur, but also from the other side of the table when you did BD at Shire, assessing new technologies. Sometimes when we are a very early stage company, we need to provide for investors business model or market size for an innovative, cutting edge technology that is mainly in our brain, or maybe we have a patent. I can tell you that from Tarsier, the 7 years ago business model and the projection and revenue projections looked absolutely different than how it is today, and you know that definitely. So as an early stage startup company, what is the best and most efficient way to forecast the commercial opportunity for a product, and how do you pressure test this forecast?
Yeah, that's a great question. You really should begin, drafting your first forecast early in development. So I always do it right even in the preclinical stage, as you're learning about your product and its potential for the market. And there's lots of ways to go about doing this. So I'll go and learn everything about the market and looking at consensus forecasts for products that are already on the market, right? Looking at the ways that we would intend to differentiate our product and what advantages we might have. There's also clinical analogs that you can go and look at from a launch perspective. There's lots of great data sources here, particularly in the US around with the IMS data that we're fortunate to have, and as well as Symphony data, you're able to go in and mine these analog type of products to be able to start informing and shaping what a forecast could look like. But I think the most important thing is to think about the patient. So all the forecasts I ever do actually starts with from the patient, right? And you're building a patient level forecast. So it's important to go out there and look at the literature on disease incidence and prevalence, because you're trying to find who are the patients that are going to be eligible for your drug. So you're looking at the disease incidence and prevalence, and you can do it for any of the regional markets. I've worked globally, but in the US, and just focus specifically on the US, you would look at all of the data around this, and then look at what the diagnosis and treatment rates are, right, amongst these patients that have a particular disease or condition. And then you're looking at your technology to see, how it's going to fit, who's going to be eligible for this treatment at the end of the day. So you're building this really nice funnel to ultimately come up with the number of treatments that are as you believe, your forecast, right, on an annual basis on how many treatments are going to be given, and actually doing pricing. This is where you're going to first make some pricing assumptions as well to dimensionalize your market.
Yes, well, you touched on the pricing, but before that, you gave us practically the lines of the business model, so thank you so much. Regarding pricing, just as an anecdote, when I established Tarsier Pharma, the highest ophthalmic drug drop was Zidra, with around $600 per month. Now we have Tepezza and Oxavate with $100,000 a year. So surprises in the market are always a thing that we cannot foresee. So regarding pricing, how do you determine pricing and pricing strategy, and when?
Yeah, this is really something that when you start looking at market access and pricing, both of those are very important topics. You want to be able to get to your product to a patient, right? So you're going to have access and reimbursement, and pricing goes into all of that. But that really is started in phase two. So you start doing some of your payer work, and you can do primary research with payers, um, and obviously teasing out your value proposition. A lot of that's happening while you're in the clinic, learning about your product in phase two. This is where you're refining your TPP and really building in and teasing out those differentiators. That will become your basis of competition in the market. But more importantly, payers are view products more favorably for reimbursement if they're adding value, and some of the ways you would be adding value, it would be lowering costs of overall care, while you're improving quality of care for patients and potentially enhancing the patient experience. So it's really in phase two where you would begin doing all of this work in and around pricing, as you're learning about more and more about your product. So I think, Daphne, with you and the Tarsier experience, right, as we learn more and you could see the clinical utility and value of the product as it related to standard of care, that's when a lot more refinement was given to not only the forecast, but obviously the forecast was changing because the pricing was changing.
So it's not only benchmarks, but a payer survey around phase two, and in medical devices, what stage in medical devices would you go to payers, or it's a different mechanism?
No, I think the concept is the same. So, some of the things that you want to be thinking about as an entrepreneur, and as you're working on your technologies, whether it is a diagnostic or a device or a drug, is really at the same time when you're in the clinic doing your clinical program, and the things you're really looking for and the questions you want to ask during this time, is really aimed at aiding in optimizing your pricing. So you're really teasing out what, the endpoints from your clinical program. You're looking at what are the appropriate endpoints for payers and for health economic evaluations. So you would be looking to that, and you're also looking at what's the optimal duration, for the key outcomes that you're looking to achieve, and these endpoints. Also important, and I don't think utilized enough, is building in the patient voice. And, a lot of times you're going to be doing that through either patient advocacy groups, or you're going to be building in the patient voice or surveying them through patient-related outcomes or quality of life instruments. So I've had lots of examples in the clinic where my clinical team has pushed back on putting these types of instruments to work during a clinical program because they take too long or they're too cumbersome. But at the end of the day, you're really generating data that will be important for your value proposition for healthcare payers, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, we want our products to be reimbursed for them to have wide commercial success. You want them to have market access. You want them to be reimbursed. So putting that patient voice in there is critical. I think very critical for a device, but even for a drug program, it's important to utilize those and think about deploying those in your clinical programs early. So also you're looking at comparative effectiveness and real world evidence as well, which can help inform the value of your product or your technology that you're bringing to market.
So you mentioned the patients, and I know that some companies are involving patients as part of their assessment and as part of the development plan. as a patient advocacy groups, etc. Which specific product should consider patient advocacy group establishment?
Yeah, I think patient advocacy is playing a bigger role across the board for all companies, right? When I think about patient advocacy, certainly when I was at Shire, which was a rare disease company, this is, we didn't develop anything that didn't include the patient or working with the patient advocacy groups. And the reason we were doing that, right, is there's so few patients out there. So understanding the patient's journey, what they go through. There's not a lot of good literature out there for you to source to look at what the disease process or progress is for these patients. So it's rare disease is certainly a place where you're going to deploy patient advocacy, but even in the business I'm running now, small molecule business with this glaucoma product that we just launched, we are actually working with patient advocacy groups and foundations, right, in the development of patient-friendly educational materials, right? So that's just one way that you can work with them regardless of your product or what you're developing. But when people think about patient advocacy, they really do think about rare disease. But I would encourage everyone to think about the patients and patient advocacy, because almost every disease state or condition that's out there has a patient group, right? So, and there's a lot of benefits in talking to patients, because ultimately, again, at the end of the day, the technologies are going to be serving their unmet needs. So you really need to understand what those are, and you can glean a lot of information working directly with these patient groups, right? And there's other benefits too, right? So as you're looking to go into the clinic, working with patient advocacy groups actually helps you get patients and subjects for the clinical studies themselves. Diversification of clinical trials is an important topic now too, because we need to know how our product is going to perform in a diverse group of patients, right? We've seen examples recently where clinical trials are done, products get approved, and then we have safety signals or issues cropping up, right? So, so potentially by diversifying clinical trials beyond getting, more diverse population in there, we'll know how it works. Our technologies are working across, more patient types, if you will. So
we have only 42 seconds
oh my
for the
goodness,
last
okay.
and most important question for some of the audience here. From your experience as assessing in-licensed technologies for in-licensing, just 3 main tips to the audience here, what they should present to strategic while searching for strategic collaboration or an exit.
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So, while I was at Shire and running BD, I would meet with 650 companies in any given year, right? So while we were looking for products to build out our pipeline, and some of the things that I would say and encourage the team to think about, that it's the first one is simple but really important, and it really is a message to start right away. It's never too early to cultivate your sell side network and to find advocates within organization. At Shire, the organization was quite large. I was running BD for sure, but you need to have people who are going to pick up on your technology, see its advantages, and really advocate for it internally. So to do that, you really should be communicating with the organization and the company all along the way, and looking to cultivate those relationships with potential advocates that can help you get a potential deal done, right? So whether it's an ultimate acquisition or license, whatever that looks like, but pay attention to the relationships and start those as soon as you can, right? Like we heard Laurent say, go to all the meetings. I went to all the meetings. I did speed dating, right? So met with a company every half hour or hour or so for 40 or 50 companies at every meeting. So and took all the meetings. So it's important for you to even if you don't have new news, you should update companies and let them know where you are and where you're going. So so when it's an opportunistic, right? Yes, relationships matter, right? And I would also say develop your products with commercialization and market access in mind, right? So many startup companies ignore commercialization, but at the end of the day, this product is going to get commercialized if it's successful in the clinic. It's either going to be by you want to exit with a partner, or maybe even yourself, because products are going longer, right? So people aren't acquiring products until later stages. So it's really important for you to think about commercialization and build your product and do the things that would interest, right? Interest is strategic, right? And some of those things are differentiating your product, and if you can demonstrate, better patient outcomes through your development program, that makes it more interesting for strategics. And then I would say lastly, right, as you think about your technology and your product, right, I always tell people mechanisms of action don't sell drugs. Clinical utility and clinical differentiation does, whether it's a device, a diagnostic, or a drug. So you should be building your team or engaging with consultants or people who understand the commercialization process that can help you navigate the steps that you want to take throughout your development program, so that you're really building a company for someone to buy, right? An asset or a company for somebody to buy.
Susan, thank you so much. We are a little bit late, but thank you so much for all the insights and your experience that you shared with us. And for all of you, 7.5 minutes. This is what you get. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.